I should have known something was wrong the moment Derek smiled. Not a normal smile. Not the tired, hopeful smile of a man who'd held his wife through another negative pregnancy test. This was different. This smile had teeth. It had certainty. It had the kind of confidence that comes from knowing something I didn't. "I found her," he said, setting his phone down on our kitchen counter with the careful precision of someone presenting evidence. "I found our baby, Liv." Our baby. The words should have filled me with joy. Instead, they settled in my stomach like stones. We'd been trying for 4 years. 4 years of scheduled intimacy, ovulation kits, fertility clinics with their sterile walls and pitying smiles. 4 years of watching my body fail at the one thing it was supposedly designed to do. My younger sister Natasha had disappeared to Portland 18 months ago, chasing some dream she wouldn't explain. My best friend since college had stopped returning my calls after I broke down at her baby shower. Everyone was moving forward with their lives, while Derek and I remained suspended in this awful, childless limbo. But Derek never wavered. He held me through every breakdown. He researched every treatment option. He even suggested we stop trying for a while when I became so consumed with tracking my cycle that I forgot to live. He was perfect, patient, understanding. So when he sat me down 3 months ago and said the word adoption, I should have been grateful. I should have recognized it as the lifeline it appeared to be. Instead, I felt like I was giving up, admitting defeat, accepting that my body was a graveyard where potential children came to die. "A private adoption," Derek had explained, his hand warm on my knee. "There's a baby girl due in 8 weeks. The mother is young, scared, wants a good home for her child. She doesn't want to go through an agency. It's all very hush-hush, but legitimate. I have a contact who knows her." I remember asking what contact, what mother, how did he even find this opportunity? "Someone from work knows someone," he'd said vaguely. "Does it matter? This could be our chance, Liv. Our daughter." Our daughter. He'd said it with such conviction that I let myself believe him. Now, 3 months later, I was holding that daughter in my arms in the hospital's private adoption wing. 6 pounds, 4 ounces of absolute perfection. She had these tiny, delicate features and a small birthmark on her left shoulder blade that looked like a crescent moon. When she wrapped her miniature fingers around mine, something inside my chest cracked open and rebuilt itself around her. This was love. Immediate, fierce, terrifying love. "She's beautiful," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Derek stood at the window, his back to us, hands in his pockets. "She has your eyes," he said softly. She didn't. Her eyes were that mysterious newborn blue that would change in time. But I appreciated the lie. I appreciated him trying to make her feel like mine when we both knew she'd come from someone else's body, someone else's pain, someone else's impossible choice. The biological mother had already been discharged. We never met her. Derek handled everything through his mysterious contact, and the hospital staff treated the handoff with professional detachment. The baby was placed in my arms, papers were signed in private rooms, and suddenly, we were parents. "We'll name her Iris," I decided, looking down at her perfect face. "After your grandmother." Derek finally turned from the window. That smile again. "Perfect," he said. "Absolutely perfect." "Where are you watching this from? Don't just scroll past this moment. I need to know I'm not alone in what happened next. Hit that subscribe button right now Because what I discovered on that birth certificate didn't just destroy my marriage. It revealed a conspiracy so calculated, so cruel, that it changed everything I thought I knew about the man I loved. We brought Iris home to the nursery Derek had insisted on preparing himself. He'd painted it a soft lavender, installed the crib, organized every tiny sock and onesie with meticulous care. At the time, I thought it was his way of processing our journey, of taking control when so much had felt beyond our grasp. Now I see it differently. Now I understand he was preparing for a child he already knew was coming. Because he'd helped create her. Those first 2 weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and steep learning curves. Iris was a relatively easy baby, but I was terrified of doing everything wrong. I read books at 3 in the morning while she nursed from bottles I'd prepared with shaking hands. I downloaded apps that tracked her every feeding, every diaper change, every minute of sleep. Derek seemed oddly relaxed through it all, confident in a way that first-time fathers aren't supposed to be. "You're so calm," I observed one night as he changed Iris's diaper with practiced efficiency. "Most new dads are terrified of the first few weeks." "I just trust myself," he replied, not meeting my eyes. "Trust us. We were meant to be her parents, Liv." Meant to be. As if fate had arranged this. As if the universe had conspired to place this specific child into our specific home. My mother visited on day 16. She held Iris with the careful reverence of a woman who thought she'd never be a grandmother, tears streaming down her weathered face. "She's a miracle," Mom whispered. "After everything you've been through." "I wish Natasha could meet her," I said without thinking. Mom's expression clouded. "Have you heard from your sister?" "Not in months. She's still in Portland, I guess. Living her mysterious new life. Always was impulsive, that girl." Mom bounced Iris gently, running off without explanation. Not even visiting for Christmas. The conversation moved on, but something nagged at me. Natasha had left so suddenly. She'd called me from the road, voice tight with emotion she wouldn't explain. "I need a fresh start, Liv. Please don't ask me why. I just need to go." Then Portland had swallowed her whole. Her social media went dark. Her phone went straight to voicemail half the time. The sister I'd shared everything with had become a ghost. But I was too consumed with new motherhood to dwell on it. Too focused on learning Iris's different cries, the way she liked to be held, the specific angle that would ease gas from her tiny belly. Derek worked long hours, or so he said. He'd come home late, kiss my forehead, peer into the bassinet with an expression I couldn't read, then disappear into his office to catch up on emails. On day 23, the package arrived. It was from the county registrar's office. I'd been expecting it. The official birth certificate that would make Iris legally ours, replacing the hospital certificate of live birth with a document that listed Derek and me as her parents. The final piece of paperwork that would seal our family together. I was alone when I opened it. Derek was at work. Iris was napping in her bassinet beside the couch, making those soft, snuffling sounds that newborns make. I remember feeling such overwhelming gratitude as I slid the certificate from its envelope. This was real. She was ours. Whatever path had brought us here, we were her parents now. Then I saw the name on line 4, biological mother. The room tilted. My hand started shaking so violently I nearly dropped the paper. Because I knew that name. I'd known it my entire life. Natasha Marie Winters. My sister. My younger sister, who'd fled to Portland 18 months ago. Who'd stopped calling. Who'd vanished. 18 months ago. 9 months before Iris was born. The math assembled itself with cruel precision. Natasha hadn't run away to chase a dream. She'd run away pregnant. And somehow, impossibly, that pregnancy had resulted in a baby, now sleeping 3 feet from where I sat. A baby my husband had arranged for us to adopt. My husband. The biological father was listed as unknown. But that was a lie. It had to be. Derek had found this adoption. Derek had arranged everything. Derek had a contact who knew the mother. Derek had been suspiciously calm, suspiciously prepared, suspiciously confident that everything would work out. Because he'd orchestrated it all. I stared at Iris, this beautiful creature I'd already bonded with so completely, and felt my world reorganize itself around a single, devastating truth. The man I married had impregnated my sister, convinced her to give up their baby, then manipulated me into adopting my own niece so he could raise his daughter without consequence, without child support, without anyone knowing he'd betrayed me with my own flesh and blood. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? I was holding the evidence, while the baby he'd created with my sister slept peacefully beside me, completely innocent, completely unaware that her existence was both my greatest joy and my most profound betrayal. The birth certificate burned in my hands like evidence at a crime scene. I read the name 7 times, each time hoping I'd misread it, each time finding those same letters arranged in that same devastating order. Natasha Marie Winters. My sister. The girl I'd taught to ride a bike. The teenager I'd helped through her first heartbreak. The young woman who'd called me sobbing from her car 18 months ago, saying she needed to disappear. Now I knew what she'd been running from. Or rather, who. Iris stirred in her bassinet, her tiny fist flexing against her cheek. She had Natasha's nose. I could see it now. That same slight upturn at the tip. How had I missed it? How had I looked at this child every day and not seen my own sister reflected back at me? Because I'd been so desperate to see myself, so desperate to believe Derek had rescued us from our childless grief. I placed the certificate face down on the coffee table, like it might burn through the wood. My phone sat beside it, silent and accusatory. I could call Natasha right now, confront her, demand the truth. But what truth was there to demand? The paper had already told me everything. Instead, I picked up my phone and did something I hadn't done in months. I opened Natasha's Instagram. It had been dormant since she'd left, frozen on a picture of her hiking somewhere green, her smile wide and uncomplicated. But now I scrolled backward, past that last post, into the months before her departure. I was looking for something. Anything. There. 4 months before she'd left, a group photo from Derek's company barbecue that I'd hosted. I remembered that day. Natasha had come by to help me set up, had stayed for hours, laughing with my colleagues and their spouses. In the photo, she stood near the grill, holding a paper plate, her head thrown back in laughter. Derek stood beside her. His hand was on her shoulder. I zoomed in until the pixels separated. His fingers pressed into her collarbone with casual familiarity. Her body angled toward him, not away. They looked comfortable together. Too comfortable. How many times had they been alone together? Natasha had come over often in those days, before the fertility treatments consumed me. She'd help with dinner while Derek got home from work. She'd stay for movies. She'd crash in our guest room when she drank too much wine. I'd been glad they got along. grateful my husband and sister liked each other. I'd been an idiot. The front door opened. Derek's keys jangled in that specific way I'd learned to recognize. The sound that usually meant relief, partnership, home. Now it meant something else entirely. It meant the arrival of a man who'd been lying to me for at least 2 years, probably longer. Liv? His voice carried from the entryway, warm and concerned. You okay? You didn't answer my texts. I hadn't looked at my phone, hadn't noticed it buzzing. I'd been too busy watching my marriage decompose in real time. He appeared in the doorway, still wearing his work clothes, his tie loosened. Handsome, successful Derek with his architect's precision and his reassuring competence. The man every woman at those company barbecues had quietly envied me for catching. The husband who'd stood by me through years of medical disappointment without complaint. The father who'd impregnated my sister and then convinced me to raise his secret child. Liv? He moved closer, concern creasing his forehead. What's wrong? Is Iris okay? The birth certificate came, I said. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from someone else's throat. He froze, actually froze mid-step, his whole body going rigid in a way that would have been comical if it weren't so damning. And? His voice was careful now, controlled. I picked up the certificate and held it toward him. Natasha Marie Winters. I watched his face. That's my sister's name, Derek. He didn't even try to look surprised. That was what shattered me. He didn't attempt confusion or shock or any of the reactions an innocent person might have. Instead, his jaw tightened and something cold passed over his features. Let me explain, he said quietly. Let you explain? I laughed, and it came out harsh and broken. Let you explain how you got my sister pregnant and then manipulated me into adopting your child? Please, Derek, explain that. Iris woke up crying. The sound cut through the tension like a blade, her newborn wail demanding attention, demanding love, demanding the care neither Derek nor I was capable of providing in that moment. He moved toward the bassinet. I blocked him. Don't, I said. Don't you dare touch her right now. She's crying. She's your daughter! The words exploded out of me. Your daughter with my sister, and you brought her into my home and let me fall in love with her and— She's your niece, Derek interrupted, his voice hard now. Your family. Would you rather she'd ended up in foster care? The audacity of it stunned me silent. He was actually trying to twist this, to make his betrayal sound like some kind of noble sacrifice. I picked up Iris, bouncing her automatically while my world crumbled. She quieted against my chest, her warm weight both anchor and accusation. Because he was right about one thing. I already loved her. Completely. Irrevocably. In the 3 weeks since she'd arrived, she'd become the center of my universe, which was exactly what he'd counted on. When? I asked, my voice steadier now. When did it start with Natasha? Derek moved to the window, his back to me. The same position he'd taken in the hospital. I recognized it now as his avoidance posture, the stance he adopted when he didn't want to face something directly. 2 years ago, he said, finally. At that barbecue, actually. We'd both had too much to drink. You'd gone to bed early. You weren't feeling well. I remembered. I'd had a migraine from the heat and hormones from another failed IVF cycle. I'd trusted Derek to close everything down, to clean up and lock up. I'd trusted him with everything. It was one time, he continued, still not turning around. One stupid, drunken mistake. I felt terrible. We both did. Natasha left the next morning, and we barely spoke after that. I thought it was done. But she got pregnant. She didn't tell me. He finally turned, and I hated that he looked genuinely pained. Not for months. By the time she called me, she was already showing. She was scared, Liv. She didn't know what to do. She didn't want Mom to know. Didn't want you to know. So you convinced her to hide the pregnancy and give you the baby. The pieces were assembling themselves with sickening clarity. You paid for her to leave town. That's why she went to Portland so suddenly. I helped her, Derek insisted. I found her an apartment, made sure she had good medical care, supported her through the pregnancy. How generous. My laugh was acidic. You supported your mistress through her pregnancy with your child. What a stand-up guy. She wasn't my mistress. It was one night. One night that produced a child. Iris squirmed against me, sensing my agitation. I forced myself to breathe, to calm down for her sake. One night that you then covered up for 2 years while I underwent painful procedures trying to get pregnant with your baby. While I blamed my body for failing. While I fell apart thinking I was broken. Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe. Or maybe just annoyance at being caught. I wanted to tell you, he said, but it sounded hollow even as the words left his mouth. So many times. I almost. But you didn't. You let me think I was infertile. You let me suffer. And then when Natasha gave birth, you saw an opportunity. The full scope of his manipulation was crystallizing now. You could bring your daughter home, avoid child support, avoid anyone knowing you'd cheated, and play the hero husband who saved our marriage through adoption. All while your baby mama conveniently disappeared back to Portland, where no one would ask questions. That's not... He stopped, seemingly realizing he had no defense. What was the plan long-term, Derek? Were you just going to raise your daughter and never tell her the truth? Never tell me? Let Natasha stay in exile forever while you played daddy under my roof? I wanted to keep our family together. His voice rose for the first time. You were falling apart, Liv. The infertility was destroying you. Destroying us. When Natasha told me she was pregnant, when she said she couldn't keep it, I saw a solution. We'd get a baby. You'd be happy again. Natasha could move on with her life. Everyone would win. Everyone except me! I was shouting now, despite Iris in my arms. I'm raising the child my husband created with my sister. I'm the only person in this scenario who didn't consent to anything. You and Natasha decided my future without telling me. What would you have preferred? Derek demanded. That I confessed to a one-night stand while you were already emotionally fragile? That I destroyed your relationship with your sister? That I let my daughter go to strangers when you desperately wanted a child? His logic was serpentine, twisting back on itself until wrong became right and betrayal became rescue. And the most terrifying part was that some small, broken piece of me could almost see his point. Almost understand how he'd rationalized each step of this elaborate deception until it seemed not just acceptable, but necessary. Almost. Get out, I said quietly. Liv, get out of this house. Now. He stared at me, seemingly stunned that I wasn't accepting his twisted justification. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Go to a hotel. Go to hell. But you're not staying here tonight. She's my daughter. The words hung between us, heavy with truth and consequence. She's my niece, I countered. My blood relative, And I'm the one on the adoption papers alongside you, which means legally, I have just as much right to her as you do. So unless you want me to call a lawyer right now and start unraveling this entire sham, you'll leave. Now. Something in my voice must have convinced him I was serious. He grabbed his keys from the counter, his movements jerky with barely suppressed anger. At the door, he turned back. "I love her," he said. "Whatever you think of me, whatever I did wrong, I love that little girl." "Then you should have been honest from the start." My voice cracked. "You should have trusted me with the truth instead of building our family on lies." He left without another word. The door closed with a soft click that somehow felt louder than slamming. I stood in the sudden silence, holding Iris, listening to her breathing even out as she fell back asleep against my chest. My daughter. My niece. My husband's biological child with my sister. The baby who'd been conceived in betrayal and delivered through manipulation, but who was, nonetheless, completely innocent in all of this. I looked down at her perfect face and made a decision. Whatever happened next, whatever truths came to light, whatever consequences Derek and Natasha faced for their choices, Iris would be protected. She would be loved. She would never feel like a mistake or a secret or a solution to someone else's problems, even if keeping that promise destroyed everything else. The house felt different without Derek. Larger somehow, despite there being one fewer person in it. I spent that first night in a strange fugue state, going through the motions of feeding Iris, changing her, rocking her back to sleep while my mind spun through everything I'd learned. Every interaction with my sister, every conversation with my husband, replaying with this new, devastating context. At 3 a.m, while Iris nursed from her bottle and studied my face with those mysterious infant eyes, I finally called Natasha. It rang 4 times before she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "Liv? What's wrong? Is Mom okay?" Not, "How are you?" Not, "It's been too long." Her first thought was that I'd only call with bad news. That was what our relationship had become. A ghost of what we'd once had. "The birth certificate arrived today," I said quietly. Silence. Long, stretching silence that confirmed everything. "Liv." Her voice changed completely. Sharp now. Awake. "Natasha Marie Winters," I continued, reading from the paper that sat on the coffee table beside me. "Biological mother. Father unknown." I paused. "Except we both know who the father is, don't we?" She made a sound that might have been a sob, or might have been something else entirely. "I wanted to tell you." "When?" The question came out harder than I'd intended. "When exactly were you planning to tell me that you'd slept with my husband and given birth to his child? Before or after I adopted her?" "I didn't know he'd—" She stopped, seeming to realize how incriminating the sentence was. "Derek said he had a plan, that he'd found a couple who wanted to adopt privately. I didn't know it was you until after I'd already left Portland. After I'd already signed the initial papers." "You're lying." I kept my voice steady, conscious of Iris, who'd finished eating and was now dozing against my shoulder. "Derek said you both planned this. That you knew from the beginning." "He lied." Natasha's voice rose with desperation. "Jesus, Liv! Why would I agree to give my baby to my own sister without telling her the truth? What kind of person do you think I am?" "I don't know anymore," I admitted. "The sister I knew wouldn't have slept with my husband." She made that sound again, definitely crying now. "It was one night. One terrible, drunken mistake. You have to believe me." "That's what Derek said." I adjusted Iris, feeling her warm weight, This perfect innocent caught in the middle of something so ugly. You both have the same script. Did you rehearse it together? I haven't talked to Derek since before she was born, Natasha insisted. He sent money through his lawyer. Everything was arranged through a third party. I didn't even know where she was going until I saw your Instagram 3 weeks ago. You posted a picture of her bassinet, Liv. I recognized the blanket I'd packed in her going home bag. I remembered that post. A simple shot of Iris sleeping, her tiny fist curled against her cheek. That cream blanket with little stars tucked around her. I'd captioned it, "Finally Home." Thousands of likes from friends and acquaintances celebrating our journey to parenthood, completely unaware of the betrayal underneath. Why didn't you call me then? I demanded. If you were so horrified to discover where she'd ended up, why not call? Because I was terrified, Natasha's voice cracked. I'd already given her up, Liv. I'd signed the papers. Legally, she wasn't mine anymore, and part of me thought, maybe it was better this way. Maybe it was meant to be. You wanted a baby so badly, and I couldn't keep her, so maybe Derek had actually done something right for once by— Don't, I cut her off. Don't you dare try to make this sound like some kind of blessing. You and Derek created this situation. You both lied to me. Neither of you gave me the choice to decide for myself what I could handle. You're right. She was openly crying now. You're completely right. I was a coward. I am a coward. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. I couldn't tell Mom, couldn't tell you. Derek offered to handle everything, and I let him because it was easier than facing what I'd done. Iris squirmed against me, her face scrunching in that way that meant she needed to be burped. I shifted her to my shoulder and patted her back with automatic precision. This ritual I'd learned so quickly out of necessity and love. Tell me the truth, I said to Natasha. All of it. How it started. She took a shaky breath. That barbecue. You'd gone to bed. Derek and I stayed up cleaning. We were both drunk. He was talking about the fertility issues, how hard it was watching you go through it. I was going through a breakup. We were both vulnerable and stupid and— I don't need the details of how you fucked my husband. I'm sorry. She sounded small now, young, like the girl I'd protected from bullies in middle school. It happened once, on your couch. We both felt disgusting afterward, agreed it could never happen again. I stopped coming over, started avoiding you both. I thought it was over. Until you missed your period. 3 months later. I was on the pill, but I'd been sick. Antibiotics. I must have— It doesn't matter. I took 5 tests before I believed it. Then I locked myself in my apartment for 2 days, trying to figure out what to do. You could have called me, I said, and hated how my voice broke. You're my sister, Natasha. Whatever you'd done, I would have helped you. I couldn't. Her words tumbled out now, desperate to make me understand. You wanted a baby so badly. You'd just done another round of IVF that failed. You were barely holding yourself together. How was I supposed to tell you that I'd gotten pregnant accidentally by your husband? That my body did the one thing yours couldn't? It would have destroyed you. So you decided to destroy me differently instead. I called Derek, she continued, ignoring my comment. He lost his mind. Begged me not to tell you. Offered to pay for everything, to help me disappear. He said if people found out, it would ruin both our lives. Yours too, since you'd lose your husband and your sister at the same time. How considerate. He suggested adoption. Said he knew a lawyer who handled private adoptions. I could have the baby, give it to a good family, and move on with my life. He'd pay for everything. Portland seemed far enough away that no one would ask questions. She paused. I didn't know how to tell him no. The pregnancy felt surreal,
like it was happening to someone else. So I just went along with it. You just went along with it, I repeated flatly. You carried my husband's child for 9 months and gave birth and signed papers and disappeared, and you just went along with it. I was scared. Her voice rose. I was 26 years old, pregnant with my brother-in-law's baby, living alone in a strange city. I didn't know what else to do. Iris burped quietly, then settled back against me with a satisfied sigh.
I kissed the top of her head automatically, breathing in that distinct newborn smell. Mine and not mine. Family and stranger. The physical embodiment of everyone's worst choices. When did Derek tell you about his plan? I asked. His real plan. What do you mean? Come on, Natasha. When did he tell you he was going to adopt Iris himself? That he'd convinced me we should do a private adoption right around the time your baby was due. He didn't. She sounded genuinely confused now. He never mentioned you. The lawyer told me the adoptive parents were a couple in Seattle. Tech workers, early 30s. That's all I knew. You're lying. I'm not. Her desperation bled through the phone. Why do you think I freaked out when I saw your Instagram? I had no idea Derek was planning to... She stopped. Oh my God. What? The lawyer asked me so many questions about our family. About you specifically. Health history, sure, but also personal stuff. Your struggles with infertility. How close we were. I thought it was strange at the time, but he said it was standard for private adoptions. Making sure the baby wouldn't accidentally end up with someone the biological mother knew. The pieces were rearranging themselves again. He was vetting me, I said slowly. Derek's lawyer was making sure you'd never realize where Iris went. Making sure you'd believe the story about Seattle. That manipulative son of a... Natasha's voice shook with rage. He played both of us, Liv. He created this entire situation and set it up so we'd never know the truth. So he could raise his daughter in your home without either of us being able to do anything about it. Because he knew once I bonded with her, I couldn't give her up. The full scope of Derek's calculation hit me like a physical blow. He knew I'd fall in love with her. Knew that even if I found out the truth, I'd already be her mother in every way that mattered. What are you going to do? Natasha asked quietly. I looked down at Iris. This beautiful, innocent child who'd been conceived in betrayal and delivered through deception, but who was, undeniably, the greatest thing that had ever happened to me. I don't know, I admitted, but I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Do you want her back? The question hung between us, heavy with implications, because legally, Natasha could potentially challenge the adoption. She could claim she was coerced or misled. She could fight to reclaim her biological daughter, and, given the circumstances, she might even win. No, Natasha said finally, and her voice was thick with tears. I mean, God, I think about her every day. But I signed those papers, Liv. I made my choice. I couldn't be her mother. I was barely keeping myself together. And now that I know she's with you, she trailed off. You'll love her. You'll give her everything I couldn't. That matters more than biology. She's your daughter. She's your daughter now. Natasha's voice steadied with conviction. She's your daughter and my niece and Derek's biological child, and none of that changes the fact that you're the one taking care of her at 3 a.m. You're the one who's going to teach her to walk and read and navigate this world. Biology isn't everything. Tell me something, I said. If you'd known from the start that Derek planned to adopt her with me, would you have gone through with it? She was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me thinks I would have run the other direction, but another part of me wonders if I'd have been relieved. At least then I'd know she was safe, loved, with family. Even if that family was built on lies? Every family has secrets, Natasha said softly. Ours just started with a bigger one than most. After we hung up, I sat in the dim living room light, holding Iris while she slept and trying to process everything I'd learned. Derek had manipulated both of us, separately, systematically, playing us against each other without either of us knowing. He'd identified our weaknesses, my desperate desire for a child, Natasha's fear of facing consequences, and exploited them with surgical precision. But here was the thing that kept circling back. The question I couldn't answer. Did his motivation matter if the outcome was something I wanted? I had a daughter now. A beautiful, healthy daughter who needed me. Who looked at me like I'd hung the stars. Who'd already changed my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. Yes, she'd come to me through betrayal and deception. Yes, the man I'd trusted had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to bring his biological child into our home under false pretenses. But Iris was here now. She was mine now. And somewhere deep in my chest, beneath the rage and hurt and betrayal, a possessive, fierce love had taken root. The question wasn't whether Derek had wronged me. He objectively, absolutely had. The question was whether I was willing to tear apart the family we'd accidentally created in order to punish him for it. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "Can we talk? Please?" I looked at it for a long moment, then set the phone aside without responding. Let him wait. Let him wonder. Let him feel a fraction of the uncertainty he'd inflicted on me and Natasha. Because whatever happened next, whatever decisions I made about my marriage and my family and the future, they would be my choices this time, not his. Morning came with the harsh clarity it always does after sleepless nights. Iris woke at 6, demanding food with the imperious cry of someone who'd never known hunger could exist. I fed her in the nursery Derek had prepared, surrounded by his careful choices. The lavender walls, the hand-picked crib, the organized shelves of baby supplies. Evidence of a father's love or a conspirator's guilt? Both, maybe. That was the thing about Derek I was beginning to understand. He could genuinely love Iris, while simultaneously using her to manipulate me. The two things weren't mutually exclusive in whatever broken moral calculus he operated under. My phone had 17 missed calls, 12 from Derek, 3 from my mother, who Derek had apparently called to tell her we were going through something. 2 from my best friend, Jasmine, who I hadn't spoken to in months, but who'd somehow heard I'd adopted a baby. I ignored all of them and called a lawyer instead. Yvette Brennan's office? The receptionist sounded cheerful, completely unaware she was answering a call that might dismantle my life. I need to speak with Ms. Brennan about a family law matter. It's urgent. Ms. Brennan is in court this morning, but she has an opening at 2. Can I schedule you then? I agreed and spent the rest of the morning researching adoption law, feeding Iris, and avoiding Derek's increasingly desperate messages. The legal situation was complicated. Derek and I were both listed as adoptive parents on the birth certificate. The adoption was legal, but it had been obtained through fraud, through material misrepresentation of fact. If I could prove Derek had deliberately concealed his biological relationship to Iris, the adoption might be voidable. Which would mean what, exactly? That Iris would be returned to Natasha, who didn't want her? That she'd enter the foster system? That Derek would lose all parental rights while I kept mine somehow? The more I researched, the more I realized there was no clean answer, no legal remedy that would undo the betrayal without destroying the family we'd accidentally created. At noon, my mother showed up without warning. She let herself in with the key I'd given her years ago, called out, "Olivia?" in that tone that meant she'd decided to worry about me, and appeared in the nursery doorway while I was changing Iris on the table Derek had assembled with such care. "Derek called me," Mom said without preamble. "Said you kicked him out. That there was some kind of misunderstanding about the adoption." A misunderstanding. I laughed without humor, fastening Iris's diaper with more force than necessary. "That's one way to put it." Mom moved closer, studying my face the way mothers do. She was 63 but looked younger, her hair still more brown than gray, her eyes sharp with the intelligence that had gotten her through raising 2 daughters alone after Dad left. She'd taught us to be strong, to not depend on men, to protect ourselves. I'd failed spectacularly at all 3. "Tell me," she said simply. So I did. I told her about the birth certificate, about Natasha's name, about Derek's confession, his calculated manipulation, his elaborate scheme to bring his biological daughter into our home while convincing me I was adopting a stranger's child. Mom listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment, her hand resting on Iris's tiny chest as the baby cooed up at her grandmother with absolute trust. "That son of a bitch," Mom said finally, her voice ice. "Which part makes him a son of a bitch?" I asked. "Sleeping with Natasha? Getting her pregnant? Manipulating us both? All of it?" "Yes." Mom's jaw tightened in a way I recognized. She'd looked like that when Dad had left. That same cold fury barely restrained. All of it. Every calculated, selfish choice he made while pretending to support you through infertility. "But here's the thing, Mom." I picked up Iris, holding her against my shoulder. "I love her. Completely. And if Derek hadn't done what he did, I wouldn't have her. So how do I reconcile that? How do I hate him for the betrayal while being grateful for the outcome?" "You don't have to reconcile it," Mom said firmly. "Those 2 things can exist simultaneously. You can love this child and hate what Derek did to bring her into your life. They're not contradictory." "Natasha knew," I said quietly. "She slept with my husband. She carried his child. She gave her up without telling me." "Natasha was 26 and terrified," Mom countered. "Derek was her older brother-in-law who took advantage of a vulnerable moment and then manipulated her into silence. They're not equally culpable here, Liv. She still chose to sleep with him. One drunken mistake versus 2 years of calculated deception." Mom's tone left no room for argument. "Derek is the villain in this story, not Natasha. Maybe she was right. Or maybe everyone was complicit in different ways, and I was too close to see it clearly. All I knew was that I was exhausted from trying to assign blame, from measuring betrayals against each other, from trying to figure out who deserved my anger most." "What are you going to do?" Mom asked. "I have a lawyer's appointment at 2. She nodded slowly. "You know what a lawyer will tell you? That you have grounds to challenge the adoption. That Derek obtained it fraudulently. That you could potentially void the entire thing. And then what? Iris goes back to Natasha who doesn't want her? Into foster care? No." I held Iris tighter. "I won't do that to her. She's innocent in all this." "So you'll stay with Derek? Raise his daughter together and pretend none of this happened?" "I don't know." The words came out sharper than I'd intended. I don't know what I'm going to do, Mom. I just found out yesterday that my entire life is built on lies. Give me a minute to process it. She softened, reaching out to touch my arm. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to push you. I'm just worried. Don't be. I forced a smile. I'm going to be fine. We're going to be fine. But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. The lawyer's office was downtown, occupying the 15th floor of a glass tower that reflected the cloudy sky. Yvette Brennan was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that assessed me with clinical precision as I explained my situation. I'd brought copies of everything: the birth certificate, the adoption papers, screenshots of text messages between Derek and me discussing the adoption. I laid them all on her desk like evidence at trial. She reviewed them methodically, asking occasional questions, taking notes. When I finished explaining, she sat back and steepled her fingers. This is fraud, she said bluntly. Your husband deliberately concealed material facts about the child's biological parentage in order to induce you to consent to the adoption. That's textbook fraud. So I can void the adoption? Potentially. She chose her words carefully. But you need to understand what that means. If the adoption is voided, the child legally reverts to her biological mother's custody. That's your sister, correct? Who's already signed away her parental rights. Those rights could potentially be restored if she was also misled about the adoption's true nature. Yvette leaned forward. Here's what I need you to understand. The legal system prioritizes the best interests of the child above everything else. Judges don't like to disrupt established parent-child bonds. You've had this baby for 3 weeks. You've bonded with her. A court would be very reluctant to remove her from your care. But they would remove Derek's rights? Possibly. If we can prove he obtained the adoption through fraud, a judge might terminate his parental rights while maintaining yours. But that's not guaranteed. And such a proceeding would be messy, expensive, and emotionally devastating for everyone involved. I stared at the papers on her desk. My life, reduced to legal documents and billable hours. What would you do? I asked. If you were me. Yvette smiled slightly. I can't answer that. But I can tell you what questions to ask yourself. Do you want to remain married to this man? Can you trust him after what he's done? Will you be able to co-parent with him knowing how he manipulated you? And most importantly, what serves the best interest of your daughter? Your daughter. She'd said it automatically, claiming the relationship that was both absolutely true and completely complicated. Think about it, Yvette continued. Take some time, but if you decide to pursue legal action, we should move quickly. The longer you and Derek continue as co-parents, the harder it becomes to argue the adoption should be voided. I thanked her and left, my mind spinning with possibilities and consequences. Derek was waiting in my car. I'd parked in the building's garage, and somehow he'd found it. He sat in the passenger seat, looking haggard. He'd worn the same clothes from yesterday. His normally neat hair was disheveled. He looked like a man who'd spent the night in a hotel room, realizing he'd destroyed his life. Good. Liv. He started talking the moment I opened the driver's door. Please, just listen to me for 5 minutes. How did you find me? I tracked your phone. He said it like it was reasonable, like stalking your wife through GPS was normal behavior. I just need to explain. You've had multiple chances to explain. I got in the car, but didn't start it. Every single day for the past 2 years, you could have told me the truth. You chose not to. Because I love you. His voice cracked with desperation. because I knew the truth would destroy us. I made one mistake, Liv. One drunken night that I've regretted every day since. But when Natasha got pregnant, when she told me she couldn't keep the baby, I saw a chance to make it right, to give you the one thing you wanted most, to turn my worst mistake into something beautiful. You don't get to claim nobility for cleaning up your own mess, I said coldly. You didn't give me a gift. You manipulated me into raising your affair child. She's not an affair child. Derek grabbed my arm. I jerked away. It was one night. One time. That doesn't make it an affair. It makes it infidelity. It makes you a cheater and a liar. Fine. Yes, I cheated. I lied. I did everything you're accusing me of. He ran his hands through his hair. But can you honestly tell me you'd rather not have Iris? That you'd give her back if you could? It was the same argument he'd made before, and it was just as manipulative now as it had been then. He was trying to make me complicit in his betrayal by pointing out I'd benefited from it. What I want doesn't change what you did, I said. You don't get credit for fixing a problem you created. I'm her father. His voice dropped. Whatever else is true, I'm her biological father. I have rights. So does Natasha. So do I. We're all tangled up in this nightmare you orchestrated. I finally looked at him directly. Tell me something honestly. Did you ever plan to tell me the truth? He was quiet for a long moment. No, he admitted finally. I thought it was better if you never knew, that it would protect everyone. It protected you, I corrected. Everyone else you lied to. So what now? Derek asked. You want a divorce? Fine, we'll divorce. But I'm not walking away from Iris. Neither am I. We stared at each other, both of us realizing simultaneously that we were locked together. He couldn't have Iris without me. I couldn't keep him from Iris without causing legal chaos that might hurt her more than anyone. We need to figure this out, Derek said. For her sake. For the first time since this started, I heard something genuine in his voice. Fear. Not fear of losing me, necessarily. Fear of losing our daughter. His daughter. My niece. Our complicated, beautiful, innocent child. I need time, I said. Space to think. You can come by to see Iris, but we're not living together right now. We're not playing happy family while I decide whether our marriage is salvageable. How long? As long as it takes. I started the car. Get out, Derek. He did, but he stood by the driver's side window, looking at me with something that might have been regret or might have been calculation. I could no longer tell the difference. I do love you, he said. That was never a lie. I pulled out of the parking spot without responding, watching him shrink in the rearview mirror. Love wasn't enough. It had never been enough. And whatever remained of our marriage would be built on something more durable than affection. Or it wouldn't be built at all. The days that followed developed their own strange rhythm. Derek came by every evening at 6 to see Iris, spending an hour with her while I retreated to another room. He'd feed her, change her, talk to her in that soft voice parents use with infants who don't understand words yet but respond to tone. Then he'd leave, and the house would feel both emptier and more peaceful simultaneously. I'd started therapy. Dr. Patricia Chen's office was across town, decorated in soothing blues and grays, designed to make traumatized people feel safe enough to crack open. She listened to my story without judgment, then asked the question I'd been avoiding. What do you want, Olivia? Not what's fair, not what's justified. What do you actually want? I'd thought about this constantly, lying awake at 3 a.m. with Iris breathing softly in her bassinet, staring at my phone,
Derek's messages accumulating. Reading articles about infidelity and forgiveness and betrayal trauma. I want my daughter, I said finally. I want to keep being her mother. Everything else feels negotiable compared to that. Everything else meaning your marriage? Maybe. I twisted my wedding ring. I'd stopped wearing it after that first night, but sometimes I'd take it out of my jewelry box and hold it, remembering the woman who'd accepted it 7 years ago. That woman had believed in Derek completely. That woman had been an idiot. Have you spoken to your sister again? Twice. Both conversations had been awkward,
Carefully navigating around the massive hurt between us. She wants to see Iris. How do you feel about that? Terrified? The word came out before I could censor it. What if Iris meets Natasha and somehow knows? Babies can sense things, right? What if she responds to Natasha differently because on some biological level she recognizes her real mother? Olivia. Dr. Chen leaned forward. You are her real mother. Biology is only one component of parenthood. The woman who feeds her at 3 a.m, who learns her cries, who will teach her to walk and read and navigate the world. That's her real mother. That's you. Natasha had said almost the same thing. It didn't make the fear any less sharp. But I'd agreed to the visit anyway, because whatever my feelings about my sister, she had rights too. Biological rights, maybe. Emotional rights, definitely. She'd carried Iris. She'd given birth to her. She'd made an impossible choice that had somehow resulted in both of us getting something we needed, even if neither of us had chosen the path that brought us here. She arrived on a Saturday afternoon, carrying a small gift bag and wearing an expression of such profound nervousness that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Hi, she said at the door. Thanks for... I appreciate you letting me... Come in. I stepped aside, watching her enter the house she'd been in dozens of times before. Before she'd slept with my husband. Before she'd disappeared with his child growing inside her. Iris was in her bouncy seat in the living room, awake and alert, tracking motion with those mysterious eyes that hadn't yet settled into their permanent color. Natasha stopped when she saw her. Just stopped walking, her whole body going rigid. For a long moment she didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at the baby she'd given birth to 3 weeks ago and hadn't seen since. She's beautiful, Natasha whispered finally. She has your nose. I didn't know why I said it. Maybe because it was true. Maybe because I wanted her to hurt a little. Natasha moved closer, kneeling beside the bouncy seat. Hi, sweet girl, she said softly. I'm Natasha. Your what? Your biological mother? Your aunt? The woman who carried you for 9 months and then signed you away? We hadn't discussed what Natasha would be to Iris, what we'd tell her when she was old enough to ask questions, how we'd explain the complicated truth of her origins. Iris stared up at Natasha with that intense baby focus, studying this new face, this new voice. She didn't cry, didn't reach for her, didn't show any recognition beyond normal infant curiosity. I felt relief and guilt in equal measure. Can I hold her? Natasha asked. Every instinct screamed no. But I nodded and watched as Natasha picked up Iris with the careful confidence of someone who'd held babies before. She'd probably practiced during the pregnancy, preparing for a motherhood she'd never get to experience. She's heavier than I expected, Natasha said, supporting Iris's head. The nurses let me hold her for about 5 minutes after she was born, before they took her away. She was so small then. They grow fast. My voice sounded strange, formal. We sat in awkward silence, Natasha holding Iris, me watching them, both of us navigating territory that had no map. Finally, Natasha spoke. I'm not going to challenge the adoption. I'd been prepared for this conversation, had my lawyer's number ready, had arguments lined up about what was best for Iris. But hearing Natasha say it so plainly made my shoulders drop with relief I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Thank you, I said. I mean it. She looked up from Iris to meet my eyes. I signed those papers for a reason. Multiple reasons. I wasn't ready to be a mother. I'm still not ready. And you are. Anyone can see that just by looking at how you watch her, how you know exactly when she needs something before she even cries. That's just practice. No, Natasha shook her head. That's love. That's the kind of mother I wish I could be, but I'm not. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She stroked Iris's cheek with one finger. But I'd like to be part of her life. If you'll let me. As her aunt. Someone who loves her and will always be here for her, but who understands that you're her mom. What about Derek? The question I'd been avoiding. Do you blame him? Natasha's expression hardened. Every day, he took advantage of my vulnerability. He manipulated both of us. He created this entire situation and then acted like he was doing us a favor by cleaning up his own mess. She paused. But I blame myself, too. I made choices. Bad ones. I can't put all of this on Derek just because it's easier than accepting my own culpability. It was more nuanced than I'd expected, more honest. The sister I'd known before would have deflected, would have played victim, would have made excuses. This Natasha had been hardened by something. Pregnancy, maybe, or motherhood, however brief. Or just the consequences of her own actions finally catching up. I haven't decided about Derek yet, I admitted. Whether we can come back from this. Do you want to? Did I? The question kept me awake most nights. I loved Derek once. Deeply. Completely. The kind of love that makes you intertwine your entire life with someone else's. But that love had been built on who I thought he was, not who he actually was. The real Derek had spent 2 years lying to my face, had watched me undergo painful procedures while knowing he'd already impregnated someone else, had carefully orchestrated bringing his biological daughter into our home while keeping me ignorant of the truth. Could I love someone capable of that? Should I? I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me wants to, for Iris's sake. So she can grow up with both parents in the same house. That's not a good enough reason to stay married, says the woman who's never been married. Natasha smiled slightly. True, but I've watched enough friends stay in bad relationships for the kids. It doesn't help anyone. Kids know when their parents hate each other. I don't hate Derek. That was the complicated part. I hate what he did. I hate the lies. But him? I don't know what I feel about him anymore. Iris started fussing, that precursor cry that meant she was getting hungry. Natasha handed her back to me automatically, and I took her, feeling that immediate sense of rightness that came from holding my daughter. My daughter, no matter what biology said. I should go, Natasha said, standing. Thank you for letting me see her. It means more than you know. At the door, she turned back. Liv, I am sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, doesn't undo the hurt. But I need you to know that if I could go back and make different choices, I would. All of them. After she left, I fed Iris and thought about choices. The ones we make, the ones we regret, the ones that somehow lead us to exactly where we need to be, even if the path getting there was ugly. Derek had made terrible choices. Natasha had made terrible choices. But those choices had given me Iris, had given me this perfect, innocent child who looked up at me now with absolute trust. So where did that leave me? Grateful for the outcome while hating the method? Able to love my daughter while despising how she came to me? The answer, I was beginning to realize, was that both things could be true. I could hold Derek accountable for his betrayal, while acknowledging that his actions had inadvertently given me the greatest gift of my life. Those two truths didn't cancel each other out. They existed in parallel, complicated and messy, and absolutely real. That night, Derek called instead of coming by. I talked to a lawyer, he said without preamble, about custody arrangements, if we separate. Okay. I'd been expecting this. Had my own lawyer on speed dial. They said because we both legally adopted Iris, we'd have equal rights. Joint custody. Shared parenting time. He paused. I don't want that, Liv. I don't want to see my daughter on weekends and holidays. I want to be here every day. I want to watch her grow up. All of it. So do I. So what do we do? It was the same question I'd been asking myself. The same calculation I'd been running through my head at 3 in the morning and noon and every hour in between. Derek had betrayed me catastrophically. Our marriage was built on lies. But we were both Iris's parents now, both legally and emotionally, and neither of us was willing to walk away from her. Which left us exactly where we'd started, bound together by a child, unable to separate cleanly, forced to navigate a relationship that had been poisoned at its foundation. I don't know, I admitted, but I know I can't keep living in this limbo, pretending we're figuring things out when really we're just avoiding the hard conversations. Then let's have them. Derek's voice was urgent. All of them. Everything you want to ask me, everything you're angry about, everything you need to hear. I'll answer it all. Honestly. No more lies. When have you ever told me the truth voluntarily? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Every truth I've learned has been because I forced it out of you, or discovered it myself. Why should I believe you'd suddenly develop honesty now? He was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, you're right. I haven't earned your trust. I destroyed it systematically over 2 years. But Liv, I need you to understand something. The lies weren't because I didn't love you. They were because I loved you too much to lose you. That's not love, Derek. That's control. That's manipulation dressed up in romantic language. Maybe. He sounded defeated, exhausted. Maybe you're right about everything. Maybe I'm exactly the villain you think I am. But I'm also Iris's father, and I love her more than I've ever loved anything, and I can't lose both of you. There it was, the truth underneath all his rationalizations. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of losing access to Iris. I was just collateral damage in his desperate attempt to maintain his relationship with his daughter. Come over tomorrow, I said finally. We'll talk. Really talk. And Derek? If you lie to me, even once, we're done. Completely. I'll fight you for sole custody and I'll win because I'll bring every text message, every lie, every manipulation into court. Do you understand? I understand. After we hung up, I looked at Iris, who'd fallen asleep in my arms, her face peaceful and perfect. She had no idea of the chaos surrounding her. No concept of biology versus family, truth versus lies, the complicated mathematics of love and betrayal. For her, I was simply Mom, the person who fed her and held her and kept her safe. Nothing else mattered to her yet. I kissed her forehead and made a silent promise. Whatever happened next, whatever I decided about Derek and my marriage and the future, she would always be protected. She would always know she was wanted. She would never feel like a mistake or a complication or the product of someone else's bad choices. She would be loved, completely. By me, by Natasha, even by Derek in his own flawed way. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Derek arrived at 9 the next morning, carrying coffee from my favorite cafe. A peace offering or just manipulation? I couldn't tell anymore. Maybe both. Maybe with Derek it was always both. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, Iris in her bouncy seat between us like Switzerland. Neutral territory. The thing we both loved enough to attempt this conversation. Talk, I said. Start from the beginning. The real beginning. So he did. He talked for 2 hours, and I listened, and slowly, piece by piece, the full picture emerged. The barbecue had been exactly as they'd both described. Too much alcohol, Natasha upset about a recent breakup, Derek frustrated by another failed IVF cycle and his inability to fix it for me. They'd started talking, then kept talking, then somewhere around midnight crossed a line neither of them meant to cross. I woke up the next morning hating myself, Derek said, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup. Natasha was already gone. She left a note saying we should pretend it never happened. I agreed. I thought we'd both just forget about it. But 3 months later, Natasha had called, pregnant, terrified, begging him not to tell me. And Derek, instead of confessing immediately, had seen an opportunity. I know how that sounds, he said before I could interrupt. I know it makes me a monster. But Liv, we'd just gotten another negative test result. You were so broken. I couldn't stand watching you hurt. And then Natasha tells me she's pregnant and can't keep it. And suddenly there's a solution to everything. A solution, I repeated flatly. You saw your mistress's pregnancy as a solution. She wasn't my mistress. He said it automatically, then stopped himself. Sorry, you're right. The terminology doesn't matter. What matters is that I saw a chance to give you what you wanted, to turn my worst mistake into something good. By lying to me for 2 years. Yes, he met my eyes. By lying to you for 2 years. By paying for Natasha to disappear. By arranging the adoption through a lawyer who would keep everything confidential. By making sure you'd never find out the truth. And if the birth certificate hadn't arrived? If Natasha's name hadn't been on it? Would you ever have told me? He looked away. Probably not. At least he was being honest now. It didn't make it hurt less, but it was something. Did you sleep with her again? I asked. After that first time, while she was pregnant? No. He said it with conviction. Never. I haven't touched anyone else since we got married. Before that night with Natasha, and not since. It was one time, Liv. One terrible, drunken mistake. One mistake that produced a child. One mistake that produced Iris, he corrected softly. Our daughter. I wanted to scream at him that she wasn't our daughter. She was his daughter with my sister. But it wasn't true anymore. Legally, emotionally, practically, she was ours. We'd both been there for her first 3 weeks. We'd both changed diapers and administered gas drops and learned her cries. We were both her parents now, regardless of how she'd come to us. Tell me about the lawyer, I said. How much of this did he know? Derek sighed. All of it. Marcus specializes in private adoptions. I told him the whole situation up front. He's the one who suggested keeping you and Natasha separate, making sure neither of you realized where Iris was really going until the adoption was finalized. That's illegal. It's gray area, Derek said. He argued that it wasn't technically fraud because all the material facts about Iris herself were accurate. Healthy baby, no genetic issues, biological mother willingly giving her up. The identity of the adoptive parents and biological father wasn't legally required disclosure in a private adoption. But morally? Morally, it was unconscionable. I know that. Marcus knew that. We did it anyway. He rubbed his face. I convinced myself I was protecting you, that ignorance would be kinder than truth, that you'd be so happy with Iris you'd never need to know where she really came from. You were protecting yourself, I corrected, from consequences, from having to face what you'd done. Yes. He didn't argue. You're right. I was a coward. I am a coward. I took the easy path that let me keep everything. You, Iris, my reputation. I didn't consider what it would do to you when you found out. Or maybe I did consider it and decided it was worth the risk. The honesty was almost worse than the lies. At least when he was lying, I could maintain the fiction that he was redeemable, that underneath the deception was a good man who'd made mistakes. But this Derek, the one who'd calculated the costs and decided his comfort mattered more than my autonomy? I didn't know if I could love him anymore. What do you want from me? I asked. Why are you telling me all this now? Because you asked for honesty. And because... He trailed off, seeming to struggle with something. Because I finally understand that keeping you means letting you see all of me. Even the ugly parts. Especially the ugly parts. Iris started fussing. Derek moved automatically to pick her up, but I held up a hand. Let me. I lifted her from the bouncy seat, settled her against my shoulder. She quieted immediately, recognizing my touch, my smell, my voice. Derek watched us with an expression I'd never seen before. Longing mixed with grief, mixed with love. I'm not going to stop you from being her father, I said quietly. Whatever happens with our marriage, you have equal rights to her. I won't use custody as a weapon. Thank you. His voice cracked. But Derek, I don't know if I can forgive this. Not the infidelity, not even the lies. The calculated nature of it all. The way you manipulated both me and Natasha. The way you watched me suffer and decided your comfort mattered more than my right to make informed decisions about my own life. I looked down at Iris, her eyes drooping closed again. That's what I can't get past. The cold calculation. The sustained deception. You didn't make one mistake. You made thousands of small choices every day for 2 years to keep the lie going. I know. So where does that leave us? Derek was quiet for a long moment. I'll move out, permanently. Find an apartment nearby. We'll establish a custody schedule. I'll sign whatever legal documents you want to protect yourself and Iris. And if, after some time has passed, you think there's any chance we could try again, I'll be waiting. It was more than I'd expected. Less than I wanted. I'd hoped for some magical solution where Derek could unbetray me, where trust could be instantly rebuilt, where love could paper over calculated deception. But that wasn't how any of this worked. Okay, I said. We'll start there. He stood,
moving to leave, then stopped. Liv, can I hold her? Just for a minute? I hesitated, then nodded. He took Iris carefully, cradling her against his chest the way I'd taught him in those first overwhelming days. She sighed contentedly, one tiny hand fisting in his shirt. For a moment, we were frozen in that tableau. Father and daughter. The only pure thing in this entire mess. I'm sorry, Derek whispered. And I wasn't sure if he was talking to me or to Iris. I'm so sorry. For all of it. Then he handed her back and left. The months that followed were strange. Derek found an apartment 3 blocks away. We established a schedule. He'd have Iris 3 nights a week. I'd have her 4. On his nights, I'd lie in the too-empty house and alternate between relief at having space and terror that he was doing something wrong, that Iris needed me and I wasn't there. But she was fine. More than fine. She thrived with both of us, learning to smile first, at me, I won't pretend I wasn't thrilled, then to laugh, at Derek making ridiculous faces, which I had to admit was pretty adorable. Then to roll over, to sit up, to eat solid foods. Natasha visited every few weeks. We were rebuilding something, she and I. Not the relationship we'd had before. That was gone forever. But something new. Something that acknowledged the hurt while moving forward anyway. She was Aunt Natasha now, and Iris loved her without understanding the complicated biology underneath. Mom helped. She babysat when both Derek and I needed to work.
She listened to me cry. She held her tongue when I made decisions she disagreed with. She loved Iris fiercely and without reservation. And slowly, very slowly, I began to heal. I'd started dating again, much to Derek's poorly concealed dismay. Nothing serious, just reminders that I was still a person separate from motherhood, that I could be seen as desirable by someone who hadn't betrayed me. Derek asked once if I was doing it to hurt him. I told him honestly that I was doing it for me. On Iris's first birthday, we threw her a party together. Derek and I, playing co-parents, almost but not quite exes. 2 people bound together by a child and complicated history. Natasha came. Mom came. Some of Derek's family who knew a version of the truth that had been carefully curated to make everyone look better than they were. Iris wore a purple dress, her favorite color already, determined and opinionated even at 1, and destroyed a cake with gleeful abandon. She was happy, healthy, loved. That night, after everyone left, Derek helped me clean up. We worked in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from knowing someone so well you don't need words. When we finished, he lingered by the door. Thank you, he said, for today, for this year, for not making it harder than it had to be. Thank you for being a good father, I replied. Whatever else happened, you love her. That's never been in question. I love you too. He said it quietly. I know I destroyed any chance of having you back. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know that everything I felt for you before was real. The love was real, even if I expressed it in the worst possible way. I looked at him. This man I'd married 7 years ago. I'd loved him once. Maybe I still loved some version of him, the one who existed before I knew the truth. But love wasn't enough anymore. Trust mattered. Respect mattered. And I wasn't sure we could rebuild those things. Maybe someday, I said. But not today. He nodded, accepting the non-answer for what it was, and left. Iris had fallen asleep in her high chair, frosting in her hair and on her cheeks. I cleaned her up gently, changed her into pajamas, held her while she slept. My daughter. My niece. The product of betrayal and manipulation and desperate choices made by desperate people. But also, the light of my life. The best thing that had ever happened to me. The child I'd fought for and loved fiercely, and would protect with everything I had. Derek had been right about one thing. She was worth it. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the complicated mess of how she came to me. She was worth every second. 2 years after that first devastating birth certificate, I got a call from Natasha. "I'm seeing someone," she said, her voice cautious but happy. "It's getting serious. He knows about Iris, everything about Iris, and he wants to meet her." "That's wonderful," I said, and meant it. "I've been thinking about the future," Natasha continued. "About what we'll tell Iris when she's old enough to understand. About how we'll explain all of it." We'd all been thinking about that. The inevitable day when Iris would ask questions about her family tree, about why she had 2 houses, about the complicated relationships between the adults in her life. We'd have to tell her something. The only question was how much truth a child could handle, and at what age. "We'll tell her the truth," I said. Age-appropriate truth. That she was conceived by 2 people who made a mistake, but that she was never, ever a mistake herself. That her biological mother loved her enough to give her to someone who could raise her properly. That her biological father loved her enough to make sure she had a good home. That I love her enough to be grateful for every choice that brought her to me. Even the painful ones. "That's perfect," Natasha said softly. "You've always been better with words than me. I've had more practice explaining complicated things." We talked for an hour, planning for a future we couldn't quite imagine yet. When Iris was old enough to understand betrayal, old enough to judge the adults around her, old enough to decide for herself what family meant and who belonged in hers. I hoped she'd be kind. I hoped she'd understand that people are complicated, that love and hurt can coexist, that families are built as much through choice as through biology. I hoped she'd forgive us. All of us. Derek had started therapy. He told me this during one of our handoff exchanges, mentioning it casually like it was no big deal. But it was a big deal. It meant he was finally looking at the man he'd been and trying to become someone better. "I'm learning about my patterns," he said. "Why I make the choices I make. Why I thought deception was love." He paused. "I'm learning that I don't have to be that person anymore." "Good," I said. "Iris deserves better. You deserve better. So do you." There was weight in those words, an acknowledgement of everything he'd taken from me, my autonomy, my right to choose, my ability to trust, an acknowledgement that couldn't undo the past, but could, maybe, someday, inform a better future. "I'm getting there," I told him. And I was. Slowly, painfully, but genuinely. I was rebuilding myself as someone stronger than the woman who'd adopted a baby to save her marriage. I was learning that I didn't need saving, that I was enough on my own, that motherhood and partnership were separate things, and I could excel at one without the other. Derek would always be Iris's father. That was unchangeable. But whether he'd be my husband again, that was still being written. Some days I thought maybe we could try again. Other days I knew we were better apart.
Most days, I just focused on being the best mother I could be and let the future handle itself.
On a random Tuesday, 3 years after everything started, I was playing with Iris in the park when a woman approached. She was pushing a stroller with twins, looking exhausted and hopeful simultaneously. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I couldn't help noticing your daughter. She's beautiful. And I was wondering—" She trailed off, seeming embarrassed. "Wondering what?" I prompted gently. "If you adopted her?" "I'm asking because my husband and I are considering adoption. We've been trying for years and nothing's working, and I see you with her and you both look so happy. And I thought maybe—" I looked down at Iris, who was completely absorbed in examining a stick with intense toddler concentration. I thought about how she'd come to me, about the lies and betrayals and complicated truths, about how I'd almost lost her a dozen times to legal challenges and custody battles, and my own desire for revenge against Derek. About how, despite everything, she was the best thing that had ever happened to me. "Adoption is complicated," I told the woman honestly. "It's not always the fairy tale people make it out to be. There are biological parents with rights and feelings. There are legal complexities. There are identity questions your child will have to navigate. And if you're going through private adoption, you need to be extremely careful about who you trust." The woman's face fell. "So you'd recommend against it?" "No," I smiled. "I'd recommend going in with your eyes open, being prepared for complications, being honest with yourself and your partner about what you can handle, and most importantly, being ready to love a child who might come to you through a path you never expected." "But it's worth it?" she asked. "Even with the complications?" I looked at Iris again. She'd given up on the stick and was now toddling toward the swings, completely confident that I'd follow, that I'd keep her safe, that I'd always be there. "Yes," I said, "it's worth it." The woman thanked me and moved on, and I chased after Iris, who'd discovered the miracle of wood chips and was determined to taste every single one. That night, after putting Iris to bed, I sat in her nursery, still painted the lavender Derek had chosen, and thought about everything that had brought us here. The infertility, the betrayal, the lies, the birth certificate that had torn my world apart and rebuilt it into something I never could have anticipated. If I could go back, would I change anything? Would I want Derek to confess immediately, before Iris was born? Would I want to refuse the adoption, knowing the truth from the start? The answer was complicated, because changing any part of the story might mean not having Iris, and I couldn't imagine a world without her now. So maybe the point wasn't whether I'd changed the past. Maybe the point was what I chose to do with the present. I chose Iris, every day, despite how she came to me, despite the betrayals that preceded her, despite the complicated family tree she'd have to navigate. I chose her. And that, in the end, was enough. Derek and I never officially divorced. We never officially reconciled either. We existed in some gray space between married and separated, co-parenting Iris while living separate lives. Maybe someday that would change. Maybe someday I'd meet someone new and we'd make it official. Maybe someday Derek would prove he'd changed enough to earn another chance. Or maybe this was just what our family looked like now. Unconventional, complicated, built from broken pieces and held together by a child who'd never asked to be part of our mess, but who'd saved us all anyway. What would you have done if you discovered the person you trusted most had built your entire family on lies? Would you have found a way to forgive? Or would revenge have been sweeter?
Leave a comment below. I'd love to know if I made the right choice.
Because here's what I learned. Families aren't defined by how they start, they're defined by how they endure. And mine, despite everything, was enduring. Iris turned 4 last month. She asked me recently why Daddy lives in a different house. I told her that sometimes parents love each other but need space to be the best versions of themselves. She accepted this with the easy adaptability of childhood and went back to playing. Someday she'll ask harder questions about biology and choice, about Aunt Natasha and why they have the same nose, about the complicated mathematics of love and betrayal that brought her into existence. When that day comes, I'll tell her the truth. All of it. Age appropriate, but honest. Because she deserves to know her story, to understand where she comes from, even if that origin is messy and complicated, and not at all the fairy tale I once imagined. And I'll tell her one more thing, that despite everything, despite all the lies and betrayals and impossible choices, she was wanted. Desperately. By me, by Derek, by Natasha, by everyone who'd touched her life. That she wasn't a mistake, she was a miracle. My miracle. And I'd go through every painful moment again if it meant having her at the end. That's the truth I carried forward. The one that made sense of everything that came before. Love isn't simple. Family isn't clean. But both are worth fighting for. Even when the fight starts with a birth certificate and ends with your whole world rebuilt.